Okay, let's have a look at the Israel-Gaza situation. This is a story, I think, technically from last night. I don't know if that's true or not. We'll find out as we go through it. Where One News was talking about what had just happened. And the big news to do with this is that the UN for this whole conflict has refused to pass any kind of statement of ceasefire. Now, the reason for that is some of the countries have been blocking it. The US has been blocking it. The US has been saying, their veto rights. This time they abstained, and so it got through. Oh gosh, I was nearly about to say, and all hell broke loose. I don't think you could say that in relation to this, because kind of all hell has already broken loose for about 9 months in Gaza, so we won't use that analogy. Let's have a look at the story. If it feels like playing. Anytime it's ready. I'll just refresh that page in case TVNZ has changed a few things. Da-dee-da-dee-da, and then go again.
Israel is fuming after traditional ally, the US, paved the way for a UN resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Israel reacting by cancelling a diplomatic visit to Washington because a temporary truce being proposed doesn't depend on its hostages being released. US correspondent Logan Church reports.
Painful last goodbyes after an Israeli airstrike killed 18 Palestinians in one house, according to Gazan medics. The way Israel is prosecuting its war on Hamas, the soaring death toll, the millions at risk of famine, has caused a seismic shift in the US, away from one of its closest allies.
Please raise their hand.
Today, for the first time, not one of the UN Security Council members used their veto to strike down a resolution, calling for an immediate ceasefire, the release of Israeli hostages held by Hamas, and the urgent expansion of humanitarian aid. The US essentially allowing the resolution to pass by abstaining.
Certain key edits were ignored, including our request to add a condemnation of Hamas.
Israel is furious at the UN because it did not make a ceasefire dependent on the release of hostages.
It undermines the efforts to secure their release.
Israel's also furious at its most powerful ally, the US, for not using its veto power to stop this resolution.
It does feel, Aaron, a little bit like, if you are someone who is, let's say, conspiracy adjacent. I've got friends who are in there. I agree with some of the things. I agree that the mandates didn't need to come because the closing of the businesses weren't the case, but, the anti-masking was a bit ridiculous. They're kind of adjacent. That what happens in the conspiracy world is if you're not 100% supportive, then you're the enemy. So when they say at Israel is that how angry they are with the US, it's like this is one of the first times the US has ever kind of gone 3 steps the other way. They haven't gone against Israel. They've just kind of gone, we're just going to pause in this moment. And that because Israel doesn't have 100% support by the US, then now Israel is angry and they're grumpy with the US because it feels a bit like it's either all or nothing to that narrative. Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, I think it's hard to overstate how significant this is, though. I mean, the support, unquestioning, often support of the Israeli state is like a third rail for American politics. I mean, I think it shows how bad things are looking for Biden's re-election campaign because of the overwhelming public support that is being generated in support of a ceasefire and the plight of the Palestinian people, that it's been allowed to get this far where they won't use veto in the Security Council. I mean, I certainly didn't see that coming.
And it's one of the weaknesses of the left in America. One of the strengths, I think, of places like New Zealand, although the left is a bit weak at the moment, numbers-wise, but because we've got a centre-left party and a left party, because that's all in one party. So you can only vote for the Democrats if you're a lefty in America. That means the progressive left are all threatening not to vote for Biden because of what he's done to support Israel, or at least to not condemn Israel, which means if there is 10% of the party that just won't vote for you now because of Israel and Gaza conflict, like in a place like New Zealand, they'd probably be more likely to be Green voters anyway, and Labour would still have their voters. So it shows the weakness, I think, of having a broad church within the American political establishment, that if the far left within the Democrats don't like you anymore, they may sit at home and not vote. which is a concern because, you know, what's their other option?
Yeah, I mean, there's no shortage of issues with a two-party state.
Yeah.
You know, and people would make arguments about a pre-MMP situation in New Zealand where, you know, the argument is we always had coalition governments, but they were called Labour and National, and the kind of internal factional holding of those things together was sort of analogous to how we now have multi-party arrangements that are in government. But yeah, I mean, apathy and turnout from disaffected voters in a two-party system is a significant risk.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, WD, for the super chat. Just a $3.50 super chat. We'll keep going with the story.
Today, Israel's leader cancelling a planned visit by a high-level Israeli delegation to the White House.
There's more of this to come. We'll get into what the fallout, wrong word, what's happened since then. So they've cancelled a trip to the White House yesterday, and there's more to come.
A hugely symbolic move in a widening rift between the two long-term friends. Israel's reaction and its claim the US is abandoning its mandatory hostage release policy, apparently surprising American officials.
We're kind of perplexed by this. The Prime Minister's office seems to be indicating through public statements that we somehow changed here. We haven't.
But the real question here is what difference this resolution will make for the people of Gaza.
We want a ceasefire that allows us to return to our homes. We're displaced. We need food and healthcare. We've become sick. We want safety.
The UN can do little to force nations like Israel to comply with its resolutions. For all the symbolism, it's only substance that counts.
So
there you go. What I also want to do is show a little bit of video straight from the decision-making room from the UN. It's what news agency is this from? It's from Al Jazeera, and so it's been prepared as a piece to watch. So there's music and stuff behind it, but just to show you a bit more about actually what went on in the room when they made the vote yesterday.
The draft resolution has been adopted.
Sorry, and what I'll do as well, because obviously this is an audio podcast at times, is I'll actually read out the text that comes across. I apologise for anyone watching if it annoys you, but you know, our brothers and sisters who only have ears, we've got to treat them well as well. So I'll read out the subtitles for the video. It says the UN Security Council has demanded immediate ceasefire in Gaza
27-28
for the duration of Muslims' holy month of Ramadan that ends in 2 weeks.
Life must prevail in Gaza.
That's the Palestinian ambassador.
Must prevail in Gaza. Freedom must prevail in Palestine. For 6 months now, every single Palestinian in Gaza has endured untold suffering, loss, pain, and tragedy. This must stop now.
The resolution also demands the release of all captives held by Hamas.
Abstention.
The 14-0 vote was adopted after the US abstained. The US has used its veto power 3 times to block previous ceasefire calls.
The result of
Israel called the vote a travesty and has pledged to continue the war. Good on you.
This council, Israeli blood is cheap.
I just want to pause it there. That's the Israeli ambassador, for those who are listening, saying that Israeli blood is cheap. The Israeli ambassador is saying Israel's blood is cheap. Does he have any idea how many people have died in Gaza? If Israel's blood is cheap, what does that mean that the price of the blood in Gaza is worth? I don't know what the exact ratio, but what is it? 50 to 1, 100 to 1, 1,000 to 1 deaths on the other side? So if Israel's blood is cheap, that means Gaza is about 1/1,000th of the price of Israel's blood. It's a disgusting thing to say.
This is a travesty, and I'm disgusted.
All resolutions of the Security Council are international law, which makes the vote legally binding, but the US downplayed this.
We fully support some of the critical objectives in this non-binding resolution, and we believe it was important for the Council to speak out and make clear that our any ceasefire must come with the release of all hostages.
Israel has ignored Security Council resolutions in the past. The Security Council says it wants the vote to lead to a lasting ceasefire. Many fear dropping the word permanent from this resolution would allow Israel to resume its war after Ramadan regardless. Hamas has welcomed the vote and called on Israel to commit to the ceasefire.
This must be a turning point. This must lead to saving lives on the ground. This must signal the end of this assault of atrocities against our people. A nation is being murdered. A nation is being dispossessed. A nation is being displaced for decades now, but never at this scale since the Nakba.
The resolution comes after nearly 6 months of war in Gaza, during which more than 32,000 Palestinians have been killed. And that would be the end of the video from Al Jazeera. Thoughts, Aaron?
I'm finding it quite overwhelming, to be honest. The whole situation. It is so unimaginably horrific. And, you know, that it's got as far as it has, that it's shifted American foreign policy in the region, tells you how obvious it is to how many people that it is so unimaginably horrific.
Yeah.
You know, you can't starve a people into extinction. And there is a reason why the Irish have led a lot of this work, because, you know, the Irish experience and the Palestinian experience, both, you know, with significant English legacies, are, you know, have very strong parallels. You know, this is, you know, the Irish famine is one of the great misnomers of our time, and it was a similar thing. You know, just being starved to death by your colonizer. It's horrific stuff. Yeah.
What we've heard since then as well, some more news for you, is Israel has now scrapped peace talks with Hamas after the UN ceasefire vote. So not only does it look like they're going to ignore the resolution, but they've actually gone the other way. There were some form of peace talks coming that that Israel has now scrapped. Also, there was a better story than this on One News about this topic, because it had video and a bit more explanation, but let me try and explain it to you. This is also happening. One of the reasons that they're desperate to get aid in through the borders rather than airdrops, as at least 12 Palestinians drowned trying to retrieve aid parcels dropped into the sea. So what's happening is aid is coming into Gaza, and for those of you who are watching, that's literally the aid, those dozens of parachutes being dropped down. But what's happening is it got blown out into the sea, or some of them did, and people are so desperate to get the food and get the supplies that they're swimming out to get them, to bring them back. And some of them, through attempting to find food to feed themselves and other supplies, probably medicine and stuff as well, are drowning, are dying because of it. So it's one of the reasons that part of this resolution, it's so important to get the land borders open and allow supplies to come into Gaza, because the way that it's happening at the moment, I think even Hamas has said, please stop dropping supplies that way. And I think America has said, well, we have to keep doing it because there's no other way at the moment. I think there are a couple of I thinks, but we can check that out for ourselves. But yeah, you can see the desperation in people where they are basically putting their life at risk, and some of them having their lives taken to swim 100 meters offshore to get a parcel of food to feed their family, Aaron.
Yeah, or, you know, you're told that you can go to this point and collect flour and rations, and so you turn up there and you get massacred by the IDF. You know, I mean, what confidence can you have in any aid delivery system? But
Yeah.
you know, but you're right. I mean, the sheer desperation overrides anything else, and so of course you can expect people to put themselves back in that situation on the off chance that this is legit.
I mean, am I going to starve to death and die in 7 days from now? Or am I going to give it a go to get some food now? Maybe I'll lose my life, but if I don't do this, I've probably lost it anyway. That's the choice they're having to make.
Yeah, I can't conceive of the arithmetic that people have to do on an hourly basis in a situation like that.